All right, everyone, welcome to a good day of math. I hope it feels good. I hope it is good, and hopefully this concept makes sense. It's one of my favorite concepts, and it's something that for me is a lot of fun as we describe our world, even in our future. You can see into the future based on what we're going to look with this math concept. So, as always, getting me out of the way. Here we go. What we're going to be discussing and going over is probability. And as you can see in probability, sometimes you'll see people use spinners or dice or a deck of cards to just kind of give an understanding of what this probability is. So I'll move these out of the way for now. We're going to come back to them. But what we're going to be going over is finding probabilities or understanding what it means for there to be a probability to occur. What it's asking is how probable is it that something might occur. For example, when I take this dice and when I roll this dice, what's the probability that a certain number might get rolled, and then I can build that understanding out. When I spin a spinner, what's the probability that a number is going to get spun? If I pick out of a deck of cards, if I pick a card, what's the probability that a certain card will be picked? So here we go. Let's work this out. What the probability is? The probability is it's just a fraction, and we go what's the possible ways that something could occur. We use the term favorable outcomes, and it's divided by all possible outcomes. And that's how we decide and write the fraction of probability. So for example, if I'm going to roll a dice, what's the probability of rolling a 4? Well, of rolling a 4, there's on this dice, how many 4s are there? Well, there's only one 4. That's the favorable outcome, that's the 4. And how many numbers could it be? What are the number of different options, the number of different sides? Well, there's 6. So 1/6. And sometimes you might see it written as, it's 1 divided by 6, same thing as this, just the divided sign is written differently. Or you might see it written like this, 1 out of 6. All of those three items are saying the same thing. There's one possible way out of 6 possibilities for that 4 to occur. But as we write it as a fraction, the numerator is the favorable outcomes are what we're asking about, and on the denominator is all possible outcomes. So here's how it's written. The probability of rolling a 4 is 1 out of 6. So that kind of looks like some unique or some different or maybe some confusing math terminology, but that's how we write it. Probability of whatever the event is equals the favorable over the possible. This is whatever event we're talking about. If I'm doing a spinner, for example, what's the probability of if I spin this? What's the probability of spinning a 5? So this was a dice. This is a spinner. The probability of getting a 5 on this, probability of getting a 5. Let's see, so there's only one 5 on there. And there's a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's a total of 5 options, so it's 1 out of 5 for this spinner, or the spinner 1 through 5. Well, what if look at this spinner right here? What's the probability of getting, and let's have some fun with this. What's the probability of spinning if I hit this and spin? What's the probability of getting a black? I'm getting a black section of it landing on that. Well, let's see. There's 1, 2, 3, 4. We can see the numbers 1 through 8. There's 8 sections, and 1, 2, 3, and 4 of them are black. So the number of favorable outcomes, the number of possibilities, there's 4 out of 8 total sections. So on this spinner that's 1 through 8, the probability of getting a black one is 4 out of 8. And we'll talk more about what that means and can we reduce that? Well, you can always reduce a fraction if it's reducible, but just showing you some different fractions. What about on this one, on this 0 through 9, on this spinner 0 through 9? What's the probability of rolling, what should I say? Should I do an even number? An even number. I would count up the number of even numbers. There's 2, 4, 6, 8, and I can include 0. Let's say that I want to make that a 10. So I want to consider that a 10 so that it's not a 0 spot. So there's 5 even numbers out of 10 total sections. And then lastly, let's say I want to do this last colorful spinner. On this spinner, what's the probability that I'm going to roll? Let's say a 1 or a 2. So the probability of rolling a 1 or 2. Well, let's see, how many 1 or 2s are there? There's this many. There's 2 of them. So there's 2 possible ways to get a 1 or a 2 out of 8. So this is what a probability looks like. Well, probabilities don't have to stay fractions. Sometimes they can be decimals, percents. It's the same thing. For example, 1 out of 6. What's 1 out of 6? Well, if I just type in 1 divided by 6, just type in the fraction. Oh, it's 0.166 on forever. So that's the same thing as 0.1666666 with the bar. And if I write that as a percent, we've learned in the past, that's 16.6 on forever percent. So there's a 16% chance that I'm going to roll a 4. If I do the same thing with 1/5, if I type in 1 divided by 5, then I get 0.2. Or when you move that decimal to change it into a percent, it's 20%. 4 over 8, you might already see that that's 1/2. That's the same thing as 1/2, but 4 divided by 8, 0.5. Or if I reduce the fraction to be 1/2, that's 50%. And 5/10, you know, that's the same thing. That's also 1/2. So that's also 50%. And then finally, 2 divided by 8, you might be able to see what that is. Your calculator will make it sure, 0.25. You move the decimal 2 places, you get 25%. So that's how we write probabilities. That's how we write them, either as a fraction or a decimal or a percent. Rolling a 4 is only 16%. Rolling, getting a 1 or 2 is only 25%. What if I did this spinner? What if I want the probability on the spinner of getting anything less than 7? Of getting a less than 7, so something less than 7. Well, that's a 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That's there's 6 of them, so there's 6 out of 8. And if you work that on the calculator, you find that that's a 0.75. There's a 75% chance that I'll get something less than a 7. And to play around just a little bit more, what's the probability that I get a number greater than 0? Well, how many numbers are greater than 0? Well, 8 numbers are. Out of the 8, which when you divide that, you get 1, which is 100%. So the reason to play around with that a little bit is so you can see that, well, there's all these different percents that could happen. Percent can be between 0, there's no chance of it happening, and 1, 0 and 1. Or if you want to talk about percents, 0% to 100%. And of course, in the middle is 50%. So percentages down here, down by 0, or the fractions that give us a percent down here, this is not very likely. I mean, as you go this way, it's less likely that something's going to occur. And as you come up here to 100%, this is more likely. to the point where you get up here to 100%, this is certain to occur. It is most definitely going to occur. And down here at 0%, it's basically impossible. It's not going to happen if it's 0%. How many times are you going to see a pig fly? Well, never. How many people do you know that are older than 0 days old? Or 0 seconds old? Well, everybody. It's all people. Most, well, and all the probabilities will fall in the middle. One last item to share on this. It's the notion of being fair. Let's say I've got a spinner, and let's do this right here. It's got the numbers 1, 2, and 3. And I've got this spinner that I'm going to spin. Let's say that it's looks like this right there. Got the spinner going. All right. Is that a fair spinner? And one way to think of it is are all the options equally likely to happen? When I flip that, if I say, hey, pick a number, if you pick it right, I'll give you $1 million. Well, of course, you're going to pick the one that's most fair in your favor. Let's say if you roll a certain one, you're automatically going to get an F in this class. Well, you're going to choose the least likely possibility. To do probabilities correctly, there needs to be a fair situation. It's got to be fair. This is clearly not a fair situation on the spinner, because 2 is hardly not ever going to be reached. But 3, well, yes, 3 will be reached. 3 will definitely occur on most of them. So this item of fair, we want to make sure that when we're talking about dice, 6 sides that are all fairly or equally represented. On a spinner, we want, however it's broken up, we want it to be fairly represented. And I could go into more of that, but I think I've spent a little too much time on this already. Hopefully, if you're still with me, it still makes sense. But thanks for watching. Thanks for understanding, I hope. And let me know if I can help anymore. Have a great day.